So what we're going to do today is we're going to download a 165-page document, Situational Awareness, by the young German Aschenbrenner, and see if we can get our minds around a 165-page document.
In here, there is a link that we clicked, Situational Awareness, the decade ahead. Just took us into here. Then we will see full series as PDF. So here's the 165-page document. So what we're going to do is we're going to download this now. So we have it. Then we're going to go and we're going to go back into Gemini and we're going to say, please summarize the following document. We're going to add it. We're going to try it on a couple different ones because even though we have Gemini working in the background, we're going to see how ChatGPT, how Claude, and how Gemini all respond.
On this one, let's just say, can you give us a one-page summary of the 165-page Situational Awareness by Aschenberger?
Let's see if we can find it. Our PDF is loaded into Gemini. So all we said was, please summarize the following document. We have the document. We're going to upload this document now. So it is looking and it's figuring out what it's going to say based on what it's reading. So based on the 165-page document, it talks about how he discusses rapid advancements in AI and the potential of achieving artificial general intelligence and super intelligence by the end of the decade. And there's an emphasis on the pace of AI, particularly with models like GPT-4, which have been extraordinary and likely to continue. Key points from the document are AGI by 2027. So the argument is that AI will be capable of doing tasks at the level of an AI researcher or engineer that could be achieved as early as 2027. Predictions based on trends in computing power, algorithmic efficiencies, and unhobbling gains or unlocking latent capabilities in AI models. Intelligence explosion. They suggest that AGI, once it's achieved, the progress will not stop at the human level of intelligence, but instead could be an intelligence explosion where it becomes super intelligent and much more intelligent than humans can be, vastly surpassing our capabilities as humans. And this could be driven by AI systems automating AI research, leading to exponential advancement in a short period of time. So essentially, it would do the research by itself without human input and just continue to iterate and expand and iterate and expand to get better. Challenges are noted in the document as well. And the race to build a $1 trillion compute cluster, robust security measures necessary for AI labs and models, and the problem of aligning super intelligent AI systems with human values and goals is obviously one a lot of people know about, and geopolitical implications of the AI race, specifically with China. The prediction is that as this race intensifies, the US government will likely initiate a government-led AGI project, similar to the Manhattan one. This would aim to consolidate resources, the expertise, and security measures to ensure a safe and responsible development of a superintelligence. And their parting thoughts are the emphasis on potential consequences of achieving AGI and superintelligence, stressing the need for serious consideration of risks and challenges involved, and calling for a realistic approach to AI development that prioritizes safety and security. So overall, the document has a picture painted of a rapidly approaching future where AGI and superintelligence becomes a reality with profound implications for society. So instead of having to read 165 pages, this was just summed up. Obviously, there's more in the 165 pages, but if you have something like that, there's a lot of people talking about it. You might not have the time for it, but you want to be kind of informed on the gist of it. This is a great alternative to do and a very smart way to do it. It's almost like Spark Notes kind of was when you were in school and you didn't want to read the whole book, but you want to get a gist of what the book's about. This is a real-time Spark Notes of documents and things available on the internet.
Let's go ChatGPT now.
So ChatGPT was able to pull this as well.
And notice on this one, we didn't upload the file. We just told it to give us.
Yeah, and it got everything right around 2027 AGI. Now we say right, having not read the entirety of the document, but it's saying the exact same thing as Gemini. So the likelihood that one of them is wrong is low because they're both talking about the same stuff here. Key points to include AI scaling trends, talking about the jump from ChatGPT 2 to 4, and the prediction of the ability to have hardware, algorithmic efficiency, and innovation methods, reinforcement and learning and in-context learning. AGI and superintelligence, discussing the acceleration of AGI. And once that's achieved, that superintelligence could have different consequences, good and bad, for science technology that comes with opportunities and risks. Strategic and security implementations discusses the military application of it and the importance of securing AI developments against espionage and the need for robust safety measures and alignment with human values. That's something that Gemini was talking about too. Energy and infrastructure challenges. This is something that wasn't talked about as much in Gemini, if at all. I don't remember Gemini mentioning this at all, but there could be a critical bottleneck with energy resources, especially with electricity and what the grid can handle. Reports suggest that despite the challenges, it is feasible to meet that need domestically, particularly through the use of natural gas. Global competition. The race for AI supremacy includes major players like the US and China. and it warns of geopolitical consequences if China were to lead in developing superintelligence. So advocating that the US should prioritize AI research and potentially nationalize AGI development to maintain a competitive edge and safeguard liberal democratic values. So the summary captures his detailed exploration of the future of AI, far-reaching implications for society, economy, global power dynamics. For more detailed insights, read the full summary on platforms like Less Wrong and Effective Altruism Forum. So a lot of this is what Gemini said. They both said very, very similar things. And now if you want, we can check Claude, see what Claude says. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the exact same prompt that we use for ChatGPT and Claude. We're going to see what it returns. So I'm just copy pasting directly, and I did not spell the last name correctly, and it was still able to find everything. So as we said before, don't worry so much about your spelling and grammar. It is able to figure out what you're trying to say. We're going to see what it returns. So it said it wasn't able to, and we're going to ask it why it's not able to if ChatGPT is able to. So ChatGPT was able to scour the web and find this. Why are you unable to? Now, it could be because the way the large language model is set up is that it does not have the ability to get stuff from the internet. And it's just based on what people give it as direct inputs or what it was trained on. I do not have the ability to search the web or access external information beyond what was included in its training data, which is a cutoff date in 2023. So some ways you can set up large language models is you can give it data that is specific. So you can say, here's all this data that we have. We're going to put this into the model, and this is what it's going to learn from. We're not going to give it access to the internet. It can only do what it has with what we've given it. So that's a way to kind of safeguard it from bad things on the internet or bad actors or bad inputs. You can choose what are the inputs to train the model and then say that's the only thing it has. If it's outside of this, it cannot help. It cannot do anything with it. This is how we're going to tailor this. So ChatGPT has that functionality, as does Gemini, to scour the internet, take information from that. Claude does not. So that's why we'd actually have to upload the document itself to get it to summarize what's going on with it. And even then, it might say, I'm not so sure. I don't really have the information available with AI or whatever it's trying to talk about there that it's comfortable enough speaking on, which you would think it would, but depends what it's trained on its data set. So we can do that and see right now. Summarize the following document. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude if they can summarize this podcast that it's also mentioned in the article, where it's about 4.5 hours, where the author actually speaks on all the things that he talks about in the 165-page document. So we're going to say, can you summarize this podcast? So Gemini is not able to access this website for whatever reason. It could be because, as some of the reasons it lays out, paywalls, login requirements, sensitive info, and there are other reasons that it doesn't list that may not be able to access it. So let's try ChatGPT. ChatGPT is able to do something with this. And it basically says in the podcast, they discuss the rapid advancement of AI, predicting AGI by 2027, elaborating on the predictions of large-scale AI clusters, potential economic and geopolitical impacts, and the future of AI research. They highlight the importance of computational power, algorithmic progress, and the concept of unhobbling AI to achieve more autonomous and intelligent systems. He also touches on issues like data security, energy constraints, and the competitive landscape between the US and China. So this is essentially what the 165-page document mentions, and this is done by ChatGPT from that podcast without pulling that prior information from the 165-page document instead. And it's interesting that ChatGPT was able to do this, but Gemini was not. That is a difference in these models sometimes. One time they can do something, the other can't, and you can use them depending on which ones are able to do what you're asking of them. So now Claude has the document that we had uploaded ChatGPT, so we're asking it to summarize the document as well. We're going to see if it gives a similar output to what Gemini did and what ChatGPT did. Even though with Gemini, we just explained what we were talking about with it. And with ChatGPT and with Claude, we actually gave it the direct inputs for the PDF. So Claude gave us 10 key things that it took away from the situational awareness PDF. It mentions AGI, talks about the timeline, the prediction of when things will happen, 2027 superintelligence, possibly by 2030, technological process, intelligence explosion, economic military implications, security concerns, alignment challenges with humans, government involvement, international competition, risks and challenges, call to action. It basically summarizes what is talked about by both ChatGPT and Gemini, and it seems to hit all the things that Gemini and ChatGPT mentioned, because there was a little bit of deviation between Gemini and ChatGPT, with, I believe, Gemini not mentioning the energy concerns and ChatGPT doing so. And a lot of this is covered more so, it seems, by Claude of what both of those two spoke about.
Let's see if it can do the podcast.
Yep. So what we will do, copy paste our prompt from ChatGPT, and we will see. So again, because it's not part of the model it's trained in 2023 and back, it is not able to do this because it can't scour the web. So even though we gave it a URL, it is not able to do that because it's not part of the data set it was trained on. While Claude is a very strong tool, you're not going to want to use it for anything that involves scouring the web because it actually cannot do that. It doesn't have that functionality, but ChatGPT was able to do that. And Gemini is also able to do that, but it wasn't able to find this podcast for whatever reason. After giving some possible reasons, it never was able to narrow down why it couldn't get that similar podcast. So we will ask Copilot, same thing about the podcast. We'll just start there since it's already copied and queued up. So I just paste that right in there. It's backwards from the others. We started with the document. So it was able to go in and it said, sure, I can grab that. So Copilot was able to successfully do it. Gemini was not. Talks about who is in the podcast, key points that are discussed, rapid progress and tangible trajectory of AGI since 2020. So that's interesting. Most of them mentioned that 2027 date of being when AGI can be achieved, possibly 2030. Some of them mentioned that, but none of them mentioned since 2023 being when this occurs. So even though they're all speaking about similar things, some of them are viewing it as, well, once this is achieved, at this date is when it is, or this is since this is started and we're moving towards that from this start date. They can look at the same thing and analyze it from a different lens and from a starting or an ending point. So that's worth taking note of. China and the US and the ability to infiltrate AI labs, infrastructure, intelligence explosion, the importance of infrastructure and requiring nuclear deterrence. That's a little bit new. I had not heard that in the other ones talking about nuclear deterrence. Privatizing AGI development and risks with that, which could lead to an unstable arms race. That's kind of like talking about how there should be a concerted effort from the government to look into this and do some sort of a Manhattan Project type program to look into this for the United States. But this is talking about how, apart from that, it would be bad to privatize that and how that could cause an unstable arms race. So that's an interesting different side of the same coin. Necessity of the government coalition to ensure security and alignment during AGI development. And then talking on the broader implications, robotics, biology, manufacturing, and challenges of the AI alignment during the rapid advancements.
So can you delve into the issue of natural gas being a required
Source of
element
energy
in order to achieve the scale of large language model development that would be needed to achieve AGI? Tell it we are working on a report on the state AI readiness in Ohio for the Pentagon. Given Intel's investments in Ohio and the existence of shale gas in Ohio, how does that bode for Ohio becoming the world's silicon park?
So we were able to get pretty good information from this prompt that we just input. It had all kinds of different teased out thoughts for what we'd asked about: shale gas resources, Intel's investment, AI readiness initiatives, strategic location infrastructure, and a conclusion. We'd asked up here about the issue of natural gas, because natural gas will be required by estimates to make sure we can use AI in the capacity needed to develop it into AGI. And it would take a considerable amount of natural gas investment in that to generate that electricity, because currently we would fall short of the needed electricity generation capacity. But we wanted to give this to prime it to then ask that question with more of an eye on how that fits not only with Ohio, but into artificial intelligence and AGI in general, to see if it gives a little bit different of an answer with a little bit more context around why and what we're trying to ask it to accomplish.
It's saying the conclusion is combining Intel's investment, the availability of shale gas, and proactive AI readiness initiatives. Ohio is on the promising path to becoming a global leader in AI development. The state's strategic efforts and resources position it well to capitalize on the growing demand for AI technologies and infrastructure. So let's go ahead and say, based on the conclusion, can you draft a 2-page strategy document on how to achieve, maybe cut and paste?
We're going to copy this now, just because it went ahead and talked about how all this fits in based on the natural gas usage. And as someone who works in energy, natural gas is a very potent resource where it gets a lot of energy production per unit, but it definitely does pollute a good amount and release a lot of carbon. So there are trade-offs with that, and a lot of that is discussed. Lower carbon emissions, yes, when compared to coal and oil, but there are more eco-friendly ways of generating electricity. However, you might not get as much per unit. So there's all kinds of little nuances and things that go into that. So what we're going to do is say, based on the conclusion above that stated, and we're going to quote it, please draft a 2-page, what did you say?
Strategic guide, Ohio becoming the nation's silicon harbor.
So it was able to give us a lot of information on this. It has developed what I would say is about 1 to 2 pages worth of content around this, where it said that the strategic guideline for Ohio to become the nation's Silicon Heartland in AI is below. It has an intro talking about this. It has leveraging Intel's investment, fostering collaboration and innovation, workforce development, utilizing shale gas resources, energy infrastructure, economic incentives, proactive AI readiness initiatives, education and training, policy and governance, attracting talent and investment, talent acquisition, investment, attraction, building a robust AI ecosystem, collaborative networks, infrastructure development, and inclusion. So it gives all this, and then it cites all of the resources that it uses in order to do this, which is available below. And you are able to go to any of them that you want, and it will tell you exactly where it's pulling from and what it's pulling from where. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy paste our prompt, but obviously not say based on the conclusion above. So you can copy stuff by hitting this, just a quick little tidbit. So if you hit copy, it'll copy our prompt. So we're going to take this into Gemini and ChatGPT and see what they think. But we do have to make a little bit of a change by removing the sent by you. And we will say, based on the statement, we will then copy this for future reference and we'll submit and we will see what Gemini returns. So Gemini was able to look at this and it gives us the intro as well, with infrastructure and energy as its first point, talking about leveraging the Intel investment, utilizing shale gas resources, building state-of-the-art data centers. Research and development is the second one, fostering collaboration, investing in AI research, attracting and retaining AI talent. Third being workforce development, upskill the workforce, promote STEM education, and create AI-focused jobs. Fourth being ethical and responsible AI, developing ethical guidelines, promote transparency, address societal impacts. And the fifth being partnerships and outreach, collaborating with the government, partnering with federal and local governments in that way, engaging with the industry and educating the public. And they give a conclusion talking about that. And it is pretty similar, but has a little bit of deviation and difference in how it's set up and what it chose to focus on compared to Copilot. And then let's check the same for ChatGPT. So for ChatGPT, we're going to paste this in. We're going to see what it returns. So ChatGPT did similar. It gave vision and goals, a little outline, bit of an introduction, then some strategic pillars, which include infrastructure development, high performance computing centers, broadband expansion, sustainable energy solutions, then talent acquisition development with educational programs, attracting top talent, upskilling the workforce. This should all sound familiar. They're talking about very similar things to each other and different plans and ideas, because a lot of the way that you move forward with this is from a similar line of thought and with similar steps. Industry collaboration, innovation, public-private partnerships, innovation hubs, research grants and funding, then regulatory and policy framework with AI governance, supportive legislation, and collaboration with federal agencies. And then finally, they have economic and community impact with job creation, community engagement, and economic diversification. So this is a little different. They talk a little bit more about just kind of overall community scale of this, which I don't believe I saw much of in Gemini or Copilot, but we just kind of skimmed it briefly to see what the main ones were that it talked about. And then this one actually gives an implementation plan, which is very interesting, which yours did not. Phase 1, which is foundation, or 0 to 2 years. Phase 2 of expansion, 2 to 5 years. And phase 3 maturity, 5 to 10 years, and how those look in different ways. And then like the others, gives a conclusion on his thoughts. So we've looked to see how this would change if it took into account all the stuff from the podcast and the 165-page document. And it is talking about shale gas, different things that this could impact. It talks about computing centers, a highlight and metric Aschenbrenner discussed. Talks about unhobbling gains. Above doesn't talk about unhobbling gains and little stuff. So while it looks like the overall framework is similar, high performance computing centers, broadband expansion, sustainable energy solutions, that might be relatively new with that. That's the same. So it looks like it keeps the main headers the same, but it is changing a bit of how it expands on them by bringing in the metrics highlighted by him, bringing in parts and pieces that were discussed in both the document and the podcast, and seeing how that changes the ripple effect of the actual expansion on each of these. We would have to look at them both side by side and comb them to see how stuff does differ fully with it and how wording and all that changes. But we know the conclusion changes because it says that it's guided by the insights from the analysis from the document podcast, and it is something that is taken into account. So what we're gonna do is copy paste this into Gemini. We see what Gemini does, how that changes. So while this is going, we're gonna do this in Copilot too. So that way they can all be working simultaneously. It is finishing up in Gemini right now. And while we wait, it's already discussing Aschenbrenner and Patel. Based on the podcast, we know that Patel was a part of that. So we know that it's looking at the podcast, at least for sure.
So what's happened here is we basically have gotten Patel and Aschenbrenner to come up with a strategy for Ohio.
It's like a consultation, leveraging investments, utilizing shale gas resources, the importance of energy resources to power AI. Again, Aschenbrenner is brought up there. State-of-the-art data centers, it's discussed, fostering collaboration. Aschenbrenner emphasizes collaboration, importantly, between academia and industry. There's a lot more direct mentioning of Aschenbrenner in Gemini's, almost every single one. Well, let's quickly check on what Copilot made. Copilot doesn't directly mention Aschenbrenner or Patel. It just reworked it from the looks of it. So that's very interesting. The rest of them have direct call outs. Not a single place in here is it called out. It has cited as a resource the podcast summary. So that's very interesting that it doesn't directly call it out, but it uses the resources available to it.
Can you summarize the major data center investment announcements in Ohio? Given that data center investment announcements, how does that compare to other states? And is Ohio becoming dominant in data center? Okay, now let's link this knowledge back to the strategy document. Ask it to update the strategy document based on this data center information.
So we'll say based on the information about data centers, please update the strategy document for Ohio. So based on what we told it, it largely keeps stuff similar because a lot of this doesn't change necessarily, like workforce development and training. That's not going to necessarily be something that's going to be impeded by or something that's going to be greatly hindered or helped by having data centers more proximal in general. But it is going to be something where if there is large scale training, that's going to become something to take into account. But it doesn't necessarily call that out here. It just says that workforce development should happen regardless, irrespective of anything like that, even after we mentioned to it that that was something we wanted to look at. Shale gas resources are discussed, proactive AI readiness initiatives, similar concept to the training programs, attracting talent and investment. All that is similar to how it was. Building robust AI ecosystem. That is something that is talking about data centers, and let's see if it does some extra work on that. Invest in development of state-of-the-art data centers. I believe it said that prior. And it also talks about the growing data center investments in the area, underscored by Google, Amazon, and Align. So that is something that may have added from that. And then 5G and high-speed internet and connectivity is discussed as well, and talking about how it can position Ohio as the Silicon heartland in AI.